Hi, it's Kim here from the TSS. In this video, we're going to look at how you can analyze your time slips in a methodical manner using what I've called the post-run analysis checklist. So it's a series of questions around what happened before and during the race so that you can improve your finish line driving abilities. So let's first look at the checklist itself. So we've just got a summary at the top here. Now I provide this as a Word document and a PDF, so you can print it or you can fill it out on your computer if you wish. So we've got the summary at the top here. The next section, which is called Driver Confidence and Preparation, is questions around what sort of strategy were you looking to implement for this particular run. So the first question is, how confident were you that you'd have the better reaction time than your opponent? Very confident, somewhat not confident. Second question is, how confident were you that your vehicle would be more consistent than your opponent's? Once again, we've got very confident, somewhat confident, not confident. These two decisions will likely affect the strategy that you choose for this run. So if we go down here, did you consider any round trends when deciding upon your strategy? Did your lane choice influence your strategy at all? So once we've filled out that first section, and this is before looking at the time slip, what was your strategy going into the race? And here's a basic strategy matrix. So these are just examples. So if you felt you had the better car, if you felt you were going to have the better reaction time, then, potentially the dialer would be the best strategy. If your opponent had the better car, but you felt you'd have the better reaction time, then potentially the driver would be the better strategy. Third here, feel that we have the better car, but we don't have we won't have the better reaction time. We feel that our opponent will have a better reaction time, then potentially the spot dropper. And if we have neither of those, then we're going to have to mix it up, and maybe the driver/spot dropper hybrid would be the best choice. So these are just examples. So the next question is, what was your primary strategy going into the race? So you choose one of the four and explain your reasoning, which could be, I've been fantastic on the tree all day, but the car has moved around a bit as far as the dial-in is concerned. So you might choose the driver strategy in that instance. Next, predict. So you've got your time slip in your hand. You haven't looked at it yet. Now we want to predict what our reaction time was, who reached the finish line first, and the margin at the finish line in both time and distance. So we enter what we thought our reaction time was and why, who we thought got to the finish line first, and then by how much. So in hundredths here, how far in front or behind were you, and what distance do you think that was? So once we've done that, we can now go and actually enter our time slip. So time slip analysis. So we enter our time slip, and we can now reflect on the performance. So what was the actual results? So what was the actual, that should say actual. Let's change that while we're here. Actual reaction time, then the time, the margin of victory, time and distance, and any notes that you have about that. Who won the race, you or the opponent? Did anybody break out? Did you execute your strategy? So fully, partially, or not at all? And if you won the race, what could you have done better? So, I could have tightened up the race a bit more. You might have missed your drop point, for example. Question 15, if you lost the race, what could you have done differently to increase your odds of winning? So this is where you would put down what you think you could have done to improve your chances. Was your opponent's behaviour pattern predictable? So did they do what you thought they would do? And then last but not least, what did you learn from this run, and how can you apply it to future races? So that, in a nutshell, is the post-run analysis checklist. So you've got your time slip in your hand, and you complete this this checklist, and then run your race in the time slip simulator. So let's look at an example that I have So here's an example of one of my races. This was the final of an event. Here's a few notes about my opponent. So he makes regular appearances in final rounds, consistently good reaction times, and very meticulous about their car preparation. So we can assume that they're going to be have a good reaction time and their car is going to run close to their dial-in. So how confident were you that you'd have the better reaction time? Somewhat. I mean, my reaction times during the day had been between an 01 to an 025, so not bad for me. How confident were you that the vehicle would be more consistent than your opponent's? Once again, somewhat. It had been fairly consistent all day. Final rounds were held in a really short period of time, so it was almost like hot lapping back to back to back. So the weather didn't change very much at all. Did you consider any round trends when deciding upon your strategy? No, it didn't move around. There was no additional prep, for example. Did lane choice influence your strategy? No. Each lane was pretty even. So what strategy did I go with? Well, given it was the final round, so I went with the dialer. My reaction times were good. The car was consistent. It was the final round, so I wanted to keep it simple. I decided to see who could put up the better package. So basically a shootout. I did dial up from a 939 to a 940, so I assumed I was holding a small amount. So was your strategy influenced by your opponent? Yes, I knew that he would be good on the tree and the car would be very consistent. So, as I said, I decided to see who could put the best numbers up. The speed difference was just under 10 miles an hour, so I felt I could judge the stripe. With the little bit that I was holding, I felt that I'd be able to judge the stripe at, a 10 mile an hour difference. So before I look at my time slip, I've estimated my reaction time. So I thought it was a 002. I thought it was really close to red. I was surprised it didn't turn red. It was very dark. The amber light lit up. And I was pretty pumped for the final round. So I had a lot of nervous energy. Who do you think reached the finish line first? I felt I just got there. By 100th, which against a 10-0 opponent, which is around the dial-in of my opponent, it's not 1.9 feet. So that was my estimation as to how much the margin of victory was. When I actually looked at the time slip, my reaction time was 004, so not too far away from what I predicted. The margin of our margin of victory at the finish line was a 007, taking 1.3 feet. However, I broke out by 2 thou to be 7 thou in front of the stripe. So I needed to take 5 thou or just under a foot to get the win. I dialed up from the 939 to 940. I did tap the brakes just before the finish line, but it wasn't enough. My opponent had a 0.009 package. So who won the race? The opponent. Did either of you break out? Yes, I did. Did you execute your strategy? Yes, I believe I did. As I said, I tapped the brakes at the finish line, and we're going to have a look at that in the time slip simulator in a second. I executed the strategy as planned. I just needed to be 2 thou better at the finish line. So let's actually have a look at the time slip. So here's the time slip. So it was a 004 to 007. I went 2 thou under. He went 2 thou over. So 1006, 1062 to give him a 9 thou package. And if we simulate this run, I'll just play it here. We'll just play it to the finish line. And stop. If we zoom right in, you can see I've broken out. The yellow line is my front wheels. The pink line is the dial-in. This is where I needed to be. So 5 thou win window and just under a foot. So I needed to be in this spot here. I needed to get rid of the the 2 thou. Now, I did just touch the brakes at the end, so if we simulate with the check for back off switched on, you'll see that I did tap the brakes. I caught them. So I'm going to slow it down as we get closer to one another. So slow it down. Just so when the yellow line is right on top of the blue line here, slow it down a bit more. And this is sort of indicative of the catch point, if you like. Where did I reach exactly the same spot? So paused it there. So what's that? There's the mile an hour cone there. So just between 1285. Where are we? 1287. So 1287 feet is where we were equal on the track. The red line is the back off point. And so I just touched the brakes. Obviously, just not enough to get back by an extra 2 thou. So if we change the camera angles, this is where we're sort of dead even, and there's the finish line there. So, and if I change to go back to there, turn this off. Now, if we go back to the analysis document here, the checklist, I executed the strategy as planned. I just needed to be 2 thou better at the finish line, which we just discussed. I did dab the brakes. If you lost the race, what could you have done differently to increase your odds of winning? So dialed up from 939 to 940. I felt like I was holding a fraction. If I'd held a little bit more, say 1 or 2 hundredths, I could have caught my opponent earlier in the run and then been able to judge the finish line better. So we can actually simulate that in the TSS. So rather than dialing a 940, let's say I dialed a 942. Let's see where the catch point, if you like, is in this instance. So now I'm holding just over 200, I assume. Play. And I will zoom out a bit, slow it down as we get. So remember, it was like 1297 we caught before, that distance. So I'm going to slow it down. And here we come up. I just want to get it so we're right on top there. Boom. So it's very close. So now we're at 1240. So we're just before the mile an hour cone. I'll switch camera modes. So now we've got some more distance between us and the finish line to make a decision. So just caught them just before the mile an hour cone. Maybe this would have given me more time and distance to back into that 5 thou window that I had. So in this instance, potentially dialing up a few numbers would have been a better strategy, so that I could have caught them a little bit earlier in the race and then had more time and distance between myself and the finish line to just to back into that win window, if you like, that 5 thou. So if we go back to the checklist, the last one here was, what did you learn from this run that you can apply to future races? So firstly, adjust the delay for time of day and nerves. So I could have rolled a few numbers into the delay box. I felt I was really close. 004's, for me is very good. So maybe a bit too close for me. And my strategy was solid, but with the mile an hour difference being fairly close, I would have been better off holding a couple of numbers and catching my opponent earlier in the run, so I had a little more time to adjust my momentum and how much stripe I took. So that, in a nutshell, is how you can use the TSS to analyze your runs. And this was an example of mine. Also using what I've coined the post-run analysis checklist. This will be available to you as a Word doc and a PDF.